how are you figuring out that the property management, that company that you're working with is a triple win kind of company? What are those telltale signs? Help our audience understand that.
Yeah. So a couple of quick notes on just like firmographical, what we would call kind of qualifications, and then further, more of those philosophical alignments that we're looking for that say this is going to be a really valuable partnership over time. First is, if I think about a real estate agent who's managing 6 homes on the side, and I expect, Pablo, I don't have a crystal ball. I'd probably ask you guys for a more informed opinion on what's going to happen in the market. But gosh, it's been a bloodbath, right, in the public markets these last few weeks. And with what we're anticipating happening, and housing is cyclical, is our experience, at least what history's shown over time. And so, hey, we expect to see some things that we saw a long time ago, like a lot of real estate agents suddenly deciding, okay, as sales market's cooling, I'm going to get into the rental property manager. Like thousands of agents are about to decide suddenly overnight, I want to be a property manager, right? And a few years later, they're going to be back to selling a lot of homes, driving their Mercedes, and back to it, right? And so all that to say, we are looking for dedicated companies. Like they've got established companies, they've committed to this business, and they're in it long-term. So when we talk to them, we talk about, how did you get into this business, right? What are you focused on? And like, how far out do you really see, like, is there an exit plan for you? Or like, what are you looking at doing with your business here? And what kind of time horizon is that on? So we're looking for people who are thinking long-term. The second thing we talk about is like, what's different about your business? Because, and a lot of people will view property managers as a commodity, right? It's like, well, a property manager is a property manager who's a property manager. Mm-hmm. And I would say most property managers and small businesses don't do a good job communicating always what they do that is different. And so sometimes we see a website and we're like, wow, unlike the JWB website where we see these kind of interesting things standing out of like $41 million in cash flow delivered and all these, a vertically integrated approach to real estate and all these things that can differentiate, like that naturally attracts us to somebody. But some people, they have some of these things and they don't communicate them very well. But we find them out in our conversations of like, oh, that's really interesting, like how they're approaching that or what they're doing there. And they're clearly trying to do something different that drives, again, a triple win. And then I would say like red flags, Pablo, we see, I mean, there's even entire courses in the property management world, conferences, and like the name of the title is like fee maxing, right? It's like, how do I maximize fees? It's just what Greg was talking about a minute ago of like, it's thinking about monetization first, and then the attitude of what's the least I can do to get to this financial result as the end goal. And second nature, who we align with, is we align with companies who ask not what's the least I can do, they ask what's the most I can do for this relationship. And then once I've added that value, I can figure out, how to charge for that, operate for that as a business where it's really generous to them. And it makes sense. I can build a business over time that's going to serve our long-term impact and transformation we're trying to have. So those are some of the things that we're looking for that are going to tell us this is going to be a best fit client.
I love it. I think you have this wealth of knowledge to help folks. And we have a lot of investors on our call here and who are going to listen on the podcast and whatnot, who have no intentions of being that professional property manager, but they would like to do business with that professional property manager who is also doing business with second nature. It is great to know that you've spoken with so many really well-run property management companies. Can you give 2 or 3 things for our folks that are listening and watching that they should look for? What tells you in a 10-minute conversation if this is a professional property manager or if this is probably that accidental property manager, realtor who, is trying to make some income in a down market?
Yeah. And I'd love to get more and more into this practical, because I do feel like up to this point, talking a little more high level and abstract here. So maybe we can get into some nitty gritty. Here's some great practical things to look for. So one is I would look for those key outcomes of like, what's an outcome that they deliver, that other people won't? And a lot of people ask like, hey, what does property management cost, without asking first, what am I going to get from property management? That's what matters much more you're choosing. And so when you think about what are you going to get from versus just what's a percentage management fee or what does it cost, and treat it all the same, again, okay, that management fee, what are you getting for it? And some of the things I'd be looking for is, okay, what does days on market performance look like, right? How good is this group at, ultimately attracting great residents and filling the property quickly, again, reducing that vacancy cost? What does the length of tenancy look like over time? And I want to recognize there's different markets. There's military markets where you're just going to see more turnover more frequently, right? For things that can be a little out of control. And that's a different proposition than maybe, other places. But I'm looking for longer residencies because I know that's going to drive a great outcome. I'll give one example. There's a property manager in Chicago, Mark Ainley, GC Realty, who does a great job. And they've trademarked the responsive property manager. And so as a property owner, I know I'm going to get communication back from this person, not a couple days later or a week later. It's going to they're way understaffed and they're so busy that they just can't be responsive to me and get me the information that I need and I'm looking for, or a resident the information I'm looking for. So they've really focused on that responsiveness and communication is a core thing where they differentiate, and they've got stats to prove it of how many calls they answer in under 60 seconds. So I'm looking for things like this and figuring out, what do I care about as an investor? What's important to me? Am I looking for an investor like JWB? I would say something that's cool is how much you all do to educate between the podcast, this very show. It's if I'm looking to improve and grow and learn as an investor, it would be great to partner with somebody like that who ultimately is going to really educate me through the process and take time in doing that, versus somebody who isn't focused on that and is kind of just looking for people who just already immediately align to what they do, and that's it. And versus willing to go on a journey with them, in improving as investors. So those are some things that come to mind, and then happy to talk about best practices in resident experience and other things we're seeing in property management, but I'll take a pause there.
Well, I'll just add one thing. I love the responsive part of this. I think that is a very clear telltale sign if somebody is going to treat your asset well, which is the job, right? To maximize the return on investment for your asset. That's really what a property manager's job is. And we do that through a great resident experience. But one of the simple things I tell folks to do is to call a property management company. And if they pick up the phone, that's a great sign. Most are not going to pick it up. And you got to understand why not. It's because most property management companies have a couple people on staff that wear hats to do every part of the business. And that person, there's no way that when they're running out and leasing a house, or they're running out and meeting a maintenance person at a house, that they're going to be there to pick up the phone call. So if you just call and nobody picks up the phone and nobody calls you back within, call it, half a business day, you're probably not dealing with a professionally run property management company. It's an easy telltale sign. And responsiveness, listen, many people spend a lot of time thinking about who their financial advisor is going to be. And they should, right? Because they're protecting your assets. They're maximizing your return on investment. They're a big part of how you're going to accomplish your financial goals. People spend almost zero time thinking about who their property manager is, but we're doing the same thing, especially if you're not your average investor and you've got 5 or 10 or 15 rental properties. You might be doing more for your financial future than your financial advisor based on how much money you have in each of those markets. So don't think of that property manager as a commodity, just like you said, Andrew. Most people do. It just blows my mind. When you think about the value you can get for the dollars you spend for effective property management, listen, there are huge brokerage houses. We all see their commercials online, right? We see the buildings downtown, right? Financial advisors get paid really well, and they should, right? That's great. You don't see those same types of commercials or companies for property management companies, but the good ones do a very similar function. You can get incredible value in a property manager if it's done well, that can create this financial wealth for you.